Chapter 1. The Discipline of Desire. If we are to begin anywhere on our journey through ancient wisdom, the Stoics offer a natural starting point. The men and women of antiquity lived in a world of uncertainty, just as we do today: wars, disease, shifting empires, fragile human lives. And in such a world, they developed a philosophy not of abstract theories, but of practical living. Stoicism was never meant to sit only in books. It was meant to be carried into the marketplace, the battlefield, the sick room, and the private chambers of the mind. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, writing in the dead of night between military campaigns, told himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The Stoic slave-turned-teacher Epictetus, who had been beaten and sold like property, echoed the same truth. Some things are up to us, and some are not. With these words, they were not pointing toward passive acceptance, but toward the most liberating discipline a human being can ever learn: the discipline of desire. The Stoics divided life into two broad categories: what is within our control and what lies outside it. Within our control are our judgments, our choices, our actions, and our inner disposition. Outside our control are wealth, reputation, health, the behavior of others, the weather, and the fate of nations. This simple distinction, known as the dichotomy of control, is deceptively profound. Think of how much of our daily suffering arises from wishing the world were other than it is. We want traffic to move faster, colleagues to treat us better, the economy to rise, our bodies never to falter, our children always to succeed. And yet, none of these things can ever be fully commanded. Epictetus used the metaphor of an archer. The archer can control the drawing of the bow, the care in aiming, the release of the arrow. But once the arrow leaves the string, it is in the hands of the wind, the shifting of the target, and the unpredictability of chance. The Stoic therefore learns to direct effort only toward the things within his command, and to meet the results with equanimity. In practical terms, this means re-educating our desires. Instead of desiring wealth, which may or may not arrive, desire instead the virtue of living with moderation, which is always within reach. Instead of desiring the approval of others, desire instead the integrity of speaking truthfully and acting justly, both of which no one can take away from you. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself, almost like a mantra, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Notice how little is said about results, rewards, or outcomes. The focus is squarely on what lies within one's grasp: intention and action. This way of thinking can be startlingly relevant today. Consider how much modern stress is fueled by the illusion of control. We refresh our phones for news updates we cannot alter. We ruminate over how others might judge us. We attempt to micromanage every detail of life, as if the universe owed us predictability. The Stoic approach offers relief. Anxiety, in its essence, is a refusal to accept uncertainty. But when we train ourselves to desire only what is within our grasp, the honesty of our effort, the clarity of our choices, uncertainty becomes less terrifying. We stop bargaining with reality and start living with it. The Stoics advised a simple practice upon waking: pause before the rush of the day and remind yourself of the dichotomy of control. You might say quietly, "Today I will meet people who are selfish, jealous, quick-tempered, or ungrateful. That is beyond me. What lies within my power is to meet them with honesty, patience, and composure. I cannot control whether fortune smiles or frowns, but I can control whether I meet the day with virtue." This small meditation, repeated daily, reshapes the architecture of the mind. We learn, step by step, to desire less of the uncontrollable and more of what is truly ours, our character. Chapter 2. Memento Mori. The gift of mortality awareness. If the first Stoic discipline teaches us what to desire, the second teaches us how to value time itself. The phrase memento mori, remember that you must die, was not intended as morbid fatalism, but as a wake-up call to life. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live. Seneca, another Stoic statesman, wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." The Stoics understood that death is the one certainty woven into the fabric of existence. The body ages, the seasons turn, fortunes rise and fall, and at some point, the curtain must close. But instead of recoiling in dread, they turned this awareness into fuel for urgency, clarity, and gratitude. When you truly remember death, trivial worries shrink in size. A petty insult, a delay, a lost convenience. These become light as dust compared to the gravity of life itself. At the same time, moments of connection, kindness, and purpose shine brighter. To the Stoics, death was not an interruption of life, but its defining edge. Just as a line cannot exist without an ending point, life cannot have shape without mortality. To forget death is to drift aimlessly. To remember it is to live intentionally. In our age of endless distractions, perhaps no Stoic teaching is more urgent. How many of us delay the things that matter, speaking words of love, pursuing a calling, repairing a relationship, because we imagine there will always be time? The awareness of death shatters this illusion. This does not mean we must live in constant urgency or reckless haste. It means choosing wisely how to spend the hours granted, aware that they are finite. Imagine looking back from your final day. Will you regret how much time was lost to scrolling, to bitterness, to fear of embarrassment? Or will you be grateful you spent it on truth, service, and love? If mornings belong to the discipline of desire, evenings belong to the discipline of mortality. Before sleep, Stoics advised reviewing the day as if it were one's last. Ask yourself, did I act according to my principles? Did I waste time on what did not matter? If tonight were the end, would I be at peace with how I live today? This reflection is not meant to breed guilt, but to cultivate alignment. It brings the scattered hours into focus, like light passing through a lens. And over time, it trains the soul to live with fewer regrets. There is an anecdote from the life of Epictetus. When asked why he seemed so calm about death, he replied that death was simply the return of a traveler to the place from which he came. If a sailor accepts that the sea may reclaim him, if a farmer accepts that the earth may bury him, why should a philosopher be unsettled? To live is to borrow, for a time, the gifts of breath and body. To die is to return them. Chapter 3. The View from Above, Cosmic Perspective. Marcus Aurelius once advised himself to take what he called the view from above. He would imagine rising beyond the confines of his own palace, beyond the clamor of soldiers, beyond even the city of Rome itself. He pictured himself looking down on the earth from high above, until the affairs that seemed overwhelming on the ground became faint and small. From such a height, even the most urgent quarrels looked like the scurrying of ants. Life's burdens became lighter not because they disappeared, but because their scale was seen in proportion to the vastness of the universe. This perspective was not meant as an escape from duty. Marcus still returned to his responsibilities as emperor and commander, but he returned with a lighter spirit. He realized that the insults, delays, and betrayals of daily life did not carry the weight he once imagined. Against the backdrop of stars and centuries, most of what troubled him was too small to matter. The Stoics believed that many of our pains arise not from events themselves, but from how we frame them. When we see a problem only from the narrow angle of personal ego, it fills the whole horizon. Yet when we step back, far back, it shrinks into its true size. The view from above is the art of reframing, of widening the lens until things fall into perspective. Picture yourself lying awake at night, replaying an awkward conversation or dreading tomorrow's meeting. From close up, the discomfort is sharp, almost unbearable. But now, imagine yourself drifting outward. First beyond your room, then beyond your neighborhood, your city, your country, until you hover above the spinning globe itself. In that vast expanse, your small mistake or tomorrow's awkwardness no longer threatens the order of the cosmos. You see humanity as a whole, billions of lives with billions of struggles, all born, living, and passing away. And suddenly the weight on your chest feels lighter. Marcus reminded himself, Remember that very little disturbs the universe. The weather continues its patterns. The stars continue their courses. The tides still rise and fall. Our personal turbulence, though it can feel immense, does not interrupt the great order of things. That recognition is not meant to belittle our feelings, but to soothe them. It reminds us that even pain fits into a larger harmony. The perspective is also deeply humbling. We often inflate our troubles because we secretly inflate ourselves, imagining that the world revolves around our personal narratives. But when you view yourself as one among countless beings across time and space, your story takes its place in the vast weave of history. The Stoics did not teach this to strip life of meaning, but to rescue it from arrogance. To see yourself as part of a greater whole is to live more gently, more gratefully. This cosmic perspective also nurtures compassion. When you rise high enough to see all of humanity as one, the divisions of nationality, race, and class blur into insignificance. The rich and poor, the powerful and powerless, all appear as fellow travelers sharing the same fragile planet. Marcus wrote that we are made for cooperation, like feet or hands, designed to work together. The view from above dissolves the illusion that we are enemies by nature. It shows us instead that we are fragments of one larger organism, interdependent and transient. In modern life, this shift in scale is more necessary than ever. We live in a culture that magnifies the trivial. News headlines amplify outrage. Social media turns small slights into storms. Every inconvenience is portrayed as a crisis. Without perspective, we are swept away in a tide of exaggerated urgency. The Stoic practice offers a kind of anchor. By recalling the vastness of the universe, we resist the pull of pettiness. We learn to reserve our energy for what truly matters. This practice also helps with personal ambition and disappointment. We spend years chasing recognition, wealth, or status, believing they will make us whole. But from the cosmic view, fame is fleeting, wealth is fragile, and status vanishes at death. What remains is not applause or possessions, but the quality of one's character. To be just, to be honest, to be kind, these carry weight beyond any title or fortune. The view from above strips away illusions and returns us to what endures. There is an exercise the Stoics might have used, and you can practice it in quiet moments. Close your eyes and imagine yourself stepping outside of your body. See yourself from the corner of the room. Then rise further, viewing the house, the street, the city. Keep rising until the landscape stretches below like a map. Imagine the rivers, the mountains, the oceans. Rise higher still until the earth itself spins before you, a blue sphere suspended in darkness. And now, picture it against the backdrop of galaxies, clusters of stars swirling endlessly. Hold this image and feel how your daily burdens shrink, not in importance, but in scale. They no longer fill the horizon. They become events within a wider order. Psychologists today recognize the calming effect of such visualization. Astronauts who have looked down on Earth from space often describe what they call the overview effect. They return with a renewed sense of wonder and humility, realizing how fragile and interconnected life is on our planet. The Stoics, without rockets or satellites, reached the same insight through imagination alone. The perspective is not meant to paralyze action. On the contrary, it gives us the strength to act with clarity. When you understand that your individual frustrations are small in the vast fabric of existence, you no longer waste energy on resentment. You conserve it for what is noble. If you are insulted, you remind yourself, in 100 years both you and your insulter will be dust. If fortune cheats you, you remember, empires rise and fall in the blink of cosmic time. What, then, is the proper response but dignity and composure? In many ways, this practice is the antidote to ego-driven stress. Much of our suffering comes from protecting our pride, defending our image, or exaggerating our importance. But when you rise above yourself, you see how little reputation matters to the universe. The stars do not care for your victories or defeats. The sea is not troubled by your embarrassment. And if the cosmos itself is undisturbed, why should you let your heart be shattered? This is not cynicism. It is liberation. The Stoics did not say that life is meaningless, but that its meaning is found not in external validation, but in the quiet pursuit of virtue. They saw the cosmos as a living order and ourselves as participants in its unfolding. To play our part well, without clinging to outcomes, is the essence of wisdom. So when you next feel overwhelmed, remember Marcus Aurelius sitting in his tent at the edge of a battlefield, writing lines not for an audience but for himself. Reminders to see the bigger picture, to keep his mind steady amidst the chaos. He knew that armies and empires would pass away, just as our own struggles will one day be forgotten. What remains is how we carry ourselves in the face of impermanence. And when you practice this view from above, you join that same lineage of seekers who, across centuries, have looked beyond the narrow confines of the self. You learn to see your troubles as passing clouds against the infinite sky. You learn to let go of the unnecessary, to cultivate compassion, and to return to your life with a lighter heart. The perspective does not erase pain, but it places it in harmony with the vastness of all that is, all that was, and all that will be. Chapter 4. Buddhist Wisdom, the Art of Non-Attachment. The Buddha's first teaching after his enlightenment was not a grand mystery, but a simple diagnosis of the human condition. He observed that life, in all its beauty, is inseparable from suffering. Birth, aging, sickness, and death cannot be escaped. Disappointment, frustration, and grief accompany even the most privileged lives. This he called dukkha, a word often translated as suffering, but closer in meaning to unsatisfactoriness. Life, as experienced through craving and attachment, is never entirely at ease. From this observation arose what we now call the Four Noble Truths. The first truth: life involves suffering. The second: suffering is intensified by clinging and craving. The third: freedom from suffering is possible, not by eliminating pain, but by releasing attachment to it. And the fourth: there is a path of practice, known as the Noble Eightfold Path, which guides one toward that freedom. This framework is neither dogma nor theology. It is closer to a physician's report. Just as a doctor first names an illness, then identifies its cause, then points to the possibility of recovery, and finally prescribes treatment, so too did the Buddha analyze the condition of human dissatisfaction. To understand the difference between pain and suffering, imagine stubbing your toe on a table. The sharp sting that rushes through your foot is pain. But when the mind begins to spin, complaining about your clumsiness, resenting the table, wishing it had not happened, that is suffering. The physical pain may last seconds, but the mental anguish can linger far longer, multiplying discomfort into distress. The Buddha's insight was that while pain cannot be avoided, suffering is often optional, arising from how the mind resists or attaches to experience. Consider the end of a relationship. The ache of loss is real and human. But alongside it often comes another layer. The stories we tell ourselves about how it shouldn't have ended, how we will never find love again, or how the other person owes us closure. These stories turn the natural pain of loss into extended suffering. Non-attachment does not mean indifference. It means feeling the ache fully, without building a fortress of resentment or longing around it. In modern life, this distinction is a lifeline. Rejection from a job application, a critical comment on social media, the inevitable decline of physical health. All these contain an element of pain. But it is the clinging to expectations, the insistence that things must unfold differently, that produces ongoing torment. If we learn to meet pain directly, without resistance, it often passes through us more quickly than expected. Mindful acceptance is the practice that allows this transformation. Instead of pushing away discomfort, you acknowledge it gently, almost as if bowing to it. Yes, this is here. You do not need to approve of it or invite it to stay forever. You simply recognize it without struggle. The breath becomes an anchor. Inhaling, you feel the body as it is. Exhaling, you soften around the discomfort. In time, the edge of suffering dulls, not because the pain has vanished, but because you are no longer adding layers of resistance. This is why the Buddha taught meditation not as an escape, but as training in seeing things clearly. In meditation, when restlessness or sadness arises, the practice is to notice it without judgment. By watching sensations, emotions, and thoughts come and go, you begin to understand directly that all experiences are impermanent. You also realize that you are not bound to every story your mind produces. You can let thoughts appear and fade like clouds across the sky. Chapter 5. The Impermanence Principle. From here we move naturally into the principle of impermanence. All conditioned things, the Buddha taught, are in constant flux. Nothing lasts. Every pleasure, every triumph, every relationship, even our own bodies, arise and pass away. The phrase, "this too shall pass," captures the essence. We often suffer because we try to hold on to what is passing. When we cling to moments of joy, insisting they should never end, their very transience becomes painful. A beautiful vacation concludes, and instead of savoring its memory, we lament its loss. A child grows older, and instead of marveling at their unfolding, we grieve the passing of each stage. Pleasure itself is not the problem. Attachment to its permanence is. The same applies to pain. When we resist it, insisting this must not be happening, we double our suffering. Yet if we remind ourselves, "this too shall pass," even anguish becomes more bearable. Sickness, heartbreak, embarrassment, none of these remain fixed. They flow like rivers, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, but always moving. To live with equanimity, then, is to navigate both success and failure with the same gentle awareness. When success arrives, you enjoy it fully but lightly, knowing it is a guest who will not stay forever. When failure comes, you bear it patiently, knowing it too will pass. This middle way frees you from the wild swings of elation and despair. You begin to stand on steadier ground, less controlled by fortune's ups and downs. In meditation, observing impermanence becomes a direct experience. Sit quietly and watch the breath. Notice how each inhale arises, lingers for a moment, and dissolves. Observe how sensations in the body shift: warmth, coolness, tingling, tension, never static, always in motion. Notice how thoughts emerge unbidden, then fade when you no longer feed them. By observing this dance of impermanence, you train the mind to loosen its grip. You begin to trust that no state, however pleasant or unpleasant, is permanent. This trust becomes a source of calm strength. The modern world, with its obsession with permanence, makes this teaching more urgent than ever. We archive every photo, preserve every message, chase anti-aging remedies, and build digital profiles as if to resist the flow of time. Yet even the strongest archive cannot hold life still. Friends drift apart, fortunes shift, bodies age, and technologies decay. To cling is to suffer. To release is to be free. Equanimity does not mean dullness. It means meeting life's changes with a balanced heart. It means laughing deeply when joy comes, and weeping honestly when sorrow arrives, but not mistaking either as final. In this balance lies a wisdom that steadies the soul. Impermanence, when fully understood, does not diminish life, it deepens it. A flower is beautiful not in spite of the fact that it will wither, but because of it. If it bloomed forever, it would cease to move us. Its fragility gives it poignancy. The same is true of human experiences. A conversation with a friend, an evening of laughter, even a fleeting glance of kindness from a stranger. All of these moments acquire their sweetness because they cannot be repeated in the exact same way. They are unrepeatable gifts, vanishing even as they appear. To recognize this is not to grieve prematurely, but to hold them with gentle reverence while they last. This is why Buddhist teachers often encourage us to live as if each encounter could be the last. Not because life is bleak, but because awareness of impermanence sharpens appreciation. If you knew this was the final time you would see someone you love, how differently would you listen? How carefully would you choose your words? How present would you be? The truth is that such a moment could come at any time. By remembering this, we are invited to bring more attention, kindness, and gratitude into our daily lives. Impermanence also humbles us in the face of success. The achievements we celebrate today may be forgotten tomorrow. Empires that once seemed unshakable have crumbled into dust. Even the great names of history eventually fade. This is not meant to depress us, but to remind us not to build our identity upon shifting ground. If we measure ourselves only by wealth, reputation, or acclaim, we will suffer when they pass away. But if we ground ourselves in qualities like compassion, patience, and honesty, then even as circumstances change, we carry something that endures. At the same time, impermanence is a source of hope. No failure, no grief, no shame lasts forever. The storm passes, the wound heals, the heart, though scarred, finds ways to open again. When we are caught in despair, we believe it is permanent. Yet history, our own and humanity's, shows otherwise. Seasons change, and spring follows even the harshest winter. The same principle that makes pleasure fleeting also makes pain less absolute. Remembering this allows us to hold steady through both extremes. Chapter 6. Right Speech and the Power of Words. Now, we arrive at another central teaching, the power of speech. Words, like all things, are impermanent, yet they leave lasting traces in the lives they touch. The Buddha often warned of careless speech, knowing that words can wound more deeply than weapons. A wound of the body may heal, but a cruel phrase can echo in the mind for decades. At the same time, a word of encouragement or truth spoken with compassion can transform a life. Right speech is part of the Noble Eightfold Path, the Buddha's practical guide to liberation. It does not mean speaking only about religious matters, but cultivating mindful communication in every interaction. To practice right speech is to refrain from lies, divisive talk, harsh words, and idle chatter that breeds confusion. Instead, it is to speak truthfully, harmoniously, kindly, and purposefully. In later traditions, this principle was condensed into the teaching of the three gates. Before speaking, pass your words through 3 questions. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? If a statement fails all 3, silence is often the wiser choice. Even if something is true, if it is neither kind nor necessary, perhaps it is better left unsaid. Words, once released, cannot be retrieved. They ripple outward, shaping relationships, and even whole communities. Consider how this applies today, in an age where speech is not limited to face-to-face conversations. Every message, every post, every comment on a screen is a form of speech. The digital world tempts us to react quickly, to trade in outrage or sarcasm. Yet the principle of right speech is no less urgent here. A thoughtless comment can wound someone across the world. A careless rumor can destroy reputations. At the same time, a sincere expression of gratitude, even typed into a glowing rectangle, can brighten someone's entire day. Technology amplifies the reach of our words, and therefore deepens our responsibility for them. The practice of mindful speech also turns inward. We are in constant dialogue with ourselves, and the quality of this inner conversation shapes our well-being. Many of us speak to ourselves with harshness we would never direct toward another person. We call ourselves failures, criticize our appearance, replay mistakes with merciless judgment. If right speech means kindness toward others, should it not begin with kindness toward oneself? To practice is to notice the tone of your inner voice, to soften it where it is cruel, and to replace condemnation with encouragement. The mind, after all, listens to itself. To bring this practice into daily life, imagine placing a small pause before speaking. Just a breath, long enough to ask the 3 questions. In that pause lies the difference between reaction and response, between words that harm and words that heal. Silence itself can be a form of wisdom, not an absence of communication, but a space in which deeper truth can arise. The Buddha himself often answered questions with silence, knowing that some matters cannot be solved by words, only by presence. There is a story from the Buddhist tradition of a monk who was insulted harshly by another. Instead of responding in kind, he simply asked, "If someone offers you a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does it belong? The one who offered the insult was left to carry it alone. This is the power of mindful speech, not only in what is said, but in what is withheld. In relationships, the quality of words is often the measure of harmony. A household where words are gentle becomes a refuge. A workplace where truth is spoken respectfully becomes fertile ground for trust. And a society where public discourse is guided by honesty and compassion is less prone to division. None of this requires lofty speeches. It requires only that individuals practice care in each sentence, each message, each response. When combined, the principles of impermanence and right speech illuminate each other. Because moments are fleeting, words matter all the more. A conversation may never come again in the same form. A chance to apologize, to express gratitude, to speak encouragement can vanish with time. Knowing this, we choose our words with intention, not carelessly. At the same time, when harmful words are spoken, remembering impermanence can soften their sting. They, too, will pass and need not define us. The art of non-attachment is woven through these teachings. We release our grip on what is fleeting, whether it be pleasure, pain, or the opinions of others. In releasing, we discover freedom. Non-attachment is not detachment. It is not cold indifference. It is the warm, steady recognition that everything is in motion and therefore cannot be possessed. We do not close our hearts to life's experiences. We open them fully, but without clinging. This is the heart of Buddhist wisdom, a path that allows us to walk through the shifting world with grace, compassion, and equanimity. Chapter 7. The Rectification of Names. Confucius once said, "The beginning of wisdom is to call things by their proper name." At first, this sounds deceptively simple, but behind those words lies one of the most powerful insights in all of philosophy. Clarity of language is the foundation of clarity of thought, and clarity of thought is the foundation of wise action. When words are distorted, when names are misapplied, when labels are vague or misleading, our perception of reality becomes clouded. And when perception is clouded, choices become confused. Confucius lived in a time of social disorder, when rulers proclaimed one thing and practiced another, when ministers cloaked selfishness in lofty rhetoric. He believed that much of the chaos stemmed from a breakdown in language. If rulers called themselves just but acted unjustly, the word justice itself became hollow. If loyalty was demanded but not practiced in return, the term loyalty lost its meaning. In such a world, people could not trust words, and therefore could not trust each other. To rectify names was not an exercise in grammar. It was a way to restore order to society by restoring precision to speech. Clear thinking begins with precise language. When you define things carefully, you strip away illusion. Take the word success. For some, it means wealth. For others, freedom. For others still, the quiet dignity of living in alignment with one's values. If we never pause to ask what the word means to us, we risk chasing someone else's definition. The same is true of words like happiness, love, loyalty, or even freedom. They are containers. Before we fill them, we must decide what they are meant to hold. In the modern world, this teaching is more urgent than ever. Political rhetoric thrives on the bending of words. A policy that restricts rights may be called protection. A war may be called peacekeeping. Empty slogans circulate, repeated until their original meaning is forgotten. Social media amplifies this confusion. Memes, sound bites, and headlines reduce complex issues to simplistic phrases. Words lose precision and become weapons of persuasion. To practice the rectification of names today is to resist this confusion. It is to pause before accepting language at face value. When someone uses a term like progress, ask, progress toward what, and for whom? When you hear freedom, ask, freedom from what, or freedom for what? By questioning the words themselves, you sharpen your perception of reality. You cut through fog and begin to see the structure beneath. This practice also applies in personal life. We often speak of values without defining them. We say we want balance, but do we mean equal time between work and family, or simply not feeling consumed by one or the other. We say we value integrity, but what does that look like in daily action? Speaking honestly, keeping promises, or refusing to compromise certain principles? The more clearly we name our values, the more clearly we can live them. Vague ideals rarely shape behavior. Defined values can. A simple exercise can bring this to life. Take a sheet of paper and write down 5 values you claim to live by. Then, for each one, write a short definition in your own words. What does kindness mean to you? Not in theory, but in practice. What does discipline look like in the rhythm of your day? When you give your values precise names, they stop being abstractions and become guides. And when challenges arise, you can return to these definitions as a compass. Confucius believed that when language is aligned with reality, society finds harmony. In the same way, when our personal language is aligned with truth, our inner world finds coherence. We no longer stumble in the dark of vague phrases. We see, we name, and we act with clarity. That is the rectification of names, the quiet but profound work of calling things what they are, so that our words, our thoughts, and our lives may rest on a foundation of truth. Chapter 8. The Golden Rule Across Cultures. Confucius also taught, "Do not impose on others what you do not wish for yourself." These words, spoken over 2,000 years ago, echo through nearly every culture and tradition. In Christianity, it appears as, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." In Islam, the Prophet Muhammad said, "None of you truly believes until he wishes for his brother what he wishes for himself." In Hinduism, the Mahabharata teaches, "This is the sum of duty. Do nothing to others which would cause you pain if done to you." Across Judaism, Buddhism, and countless indigenous traditions, the same principle emerges. Why does this single idea appear again and again, independent of time or place? Perhaps because it rests on something universal in human experience. Every person knows what it feels like to suffer and what it feels like to be treated with dignity. The Golden Rule takes that private knowledge and extends it outward. It transforms empathy into a moral compass. The power of the Golden Rule lies in its simplicity. It does not require complex theology nor detailed legal systems. It asks only that you pause and imagine. If the roles were reversed, would this action feel just? When practiced honestly, this small shift in perspective has the power to transform relationships, communities, even nations. In leadership, the Golden Rule becomes a test of character. A leader who asks, "Would I want to be treated this way if I were in their position?" rarely falls into arrogance or exploitation. It creates humility because it forces recognition of shared humanity. History remembers leaders who governed with this principle not as rulers, but as servants of the people. In parenting, the principle is equally vital. Every parent knows the temptation to demand obedience without question. Yet when a parent pauses to ask, "How would I feel if I were spoken to in this way? If I were dismissed without being heard?" the dynamic changes. Discipline becomes guidance rather than domination. Respect becomes mutual, not one-sided. Children raised in such environments learn that respect is not earned through fear, but through fairness. In conflict resolution, the Golden Rule provides common ground where arguments seem endless. In moments of anger, we often focus only on our own perspective, our grievance, our pain. But when we pause to imagine how our words or actions feel from the other side, something softens. Even if we cannot agree, we may at least treat one another with dignity. The Golden Rule does not promise the end of conflict, but it can ensure that conflict does not destroy the fabric of relationship. Practicing this principle in daily life requires attention. Our default state is self-interest. Empathy must be chosen. One way to cultivate it is through what might be called the daily empathy check. At the end of each day, reflect on your interactions. Ask yourself, did I treat others in ways I would accept for myself? Did I dismiss someone's feelings too quickly? Did I speak with a tone I would not want directed at me? The goal is not perfection, but awareness. With awareness comes gradual transformation. It is easy to dismiss the Golden Rule as too simple for a complicated world. Yet simplicity is its strength. In every culture, every era, humans face the same challenge: how to live together with dignity. Technology changes, politics shift, economies rise and fall. But the need for empathy remains constant. That is why this principle appears across traditions, not as borrowed wisdom, but as a discovery each culture made on its own. When you practice the Golden Rule, you participate in a universal tradition of moral clarity. You stand alongside Confucius, the Buddha, the prophets, and the sages who understood that true wisdom is not in knowing many things, but in living one truth well, to treat others as you yourself would hope to be treated. Chapter 9: Filial Piety and Modern Relationships. In Confucian thought, one of the highest virtues is filial piety, the deep respect and care for one's parents and ancestors. To Confucius, the family was not only a private unit, but the foundation of society itself. A person who honored their parents, who showed reverence for their elders, was more likely to carry that same respect into public life. For him, good government began with good families, and good families began with children who remembered the debt they owed to those who came before. The principle is timeless: respect and care for those who gave us life, who raised us, who carried burdens so that we might stand taller. Yet, while the value endures, the way it is practiced must adapt to changing times. In Confucius's day, filial piety often meant obedience without question. In modern societies, however, individual growth is also seen as essential. The challenge, then, is balance, honoring parents while still becoming ourselves. This balance can be difficult. In many cultures today, parents may hold expectations shaped by tradition, while children live in a world transformed by technology, mobility, and new values. Parents may desire closeness, while children may seek independence. Tension arises when respect is mistaken for submission, or when independence is mistaken for neglect. True filial piety does not demand blind obedience, nor does it justify abandoning family bonds. Instead, it is the art of weaving gratitude and respect into the fabric of one's own unique life. A modern application of filial piety is found in the care of aging parents. As lifespans increase and societies grow older, the responsibility of elder care becomes pressing. Many find themselves in the role reversal of becoming caretakers for those who once cared for them. This is not only a logistical challenge, but an emotional one. How do we provide care without losing ourselves in the process? How do we balance service with healthy boundaries? The answer lies again in the spirit of filial piety, not its rigid form. Respect for parents does not mean sacrificing one's well-being entirely. It means recognizing their dignity, listening to their needs, and showing patience in moments of weakness. Boundaries are part of this respect. A child who burns out cannot offer true care. By setting limits with compassion, saying, "I cannot do everything, but here is what I can do," we honor both parent and self. Filial piety is also broader than the family unit. It is respect for all those who came before us: teachers, mentors, elders in the community. It is the recognition that none of us stand alone. Our lives are the product of countless acts of sacrifice across generations. Even the society we live in, the books we read, the roads we travel, are gifts from people we may never know. To live with filial piety, then, is to live with gratitude for this inheritance. And there is meaning to be found in service. In a world that often glorifies personal achievement, we may forget that caring for others gives life a different kind of depth. Helping a parent in old age, guiding a younger sibling, or serving as a support to someone in need may not bring recognition, but it brings quiet fulfillment. The philosopher Lao Tzu once said that the greatest leader is one whom the people barely notice because they feel they did it themselves. In the same way, the greatest acts of service are often invisible, yet they shape the moral soil of a family and community. To practice filial piety in modern life, begin with gratitude. Reflect on what has been given to you, even if imperfectly. Then act with respect, not as blind duty, but as conscious choice. Balance care with boundaries. And remember that in honoring those who came before, you strengthen the foundation for those who will come after. This is not merely obligation. It is a way of finding meaning through service and of rooting our modern lives in one of humanity's oldest virtues. Chapter 10, Taoist Flow, the Water Principle. Lao Tzu once wrote, "Water is fluid, soft, and yielding, but water will wear away rock." At first glance, this sounds almost paradoxical. How can something as gentle as water overcome something as solid as stone? Yet when we look closely, the truth reveals itself. A rushing stream carves valleys. Waves smooth jagged cliffs into sand. Dripping water, over centuries, hollows out even the hardest rock. The lesson is simple. True strength is not always rigid. Often, it is found in flexibility, patience, and persistence. In Taoist philosophy, water is the perfect symbol of wisdom. It flows where it can, and when it encounters obstacles, it does not resist in anger. It bends, it moves around, or it waits, slowly reshaping what stands in its way. Water never loses its essence, it simply adapts. In the same way, the Taoist path teaches us to approach life not with constant struggle, but with a spirit of yielding that ultimately proves more powerful than brute force. Applied to modern life, this principle has remarkable relevance. Consider negotiation. Many approach it with the mindset of conquest. To win, the other must lose. But water teaches a different way. By listening, by adapting, by seeking the path of least resistance, one can often reach solutions that satisfy both sides. True negotiation, like water, does not force its way. It flows into the spaces where agreement is possible. And over time, this creates bonds of trust stronger than any imposed victory. The same is true in conflict resolution. Anger, like rock, is hard and unyielding. If we meet anger with equal hardness, the result is collision. But if we meet it with softness, with patience, with careful words, with willingness to adapt, the hardness begins to dissolve. This does not mean weakness. Just as water eventually wears away stone, calm persistence often outlasts aggression. To be soft does not mean to be powerless. It means to choose a different kind of strength. Career advancement, too, can benefit from the water principle. Many imagine progress as pushing endlessly forward, forcing every door open. Yet sometimes, the path of least resistance leads more naturally to opportunity. This does not mean passivity. It means observing carefully where effort flows most effectively, rather than exhausting yourself against walls that will not move. In nature, water does not climb mountains head-on. It finds the valley, the streambed, the gentle slope that carries it forward. In the same way, the most sustainable careers often grow by following currents, skills that come naturally, relationships that flow with ease, opportunities aligned with deeper values. The practice of water is one of listening and alignment. Ask yourself, where am I forcing and where am I flowing? When you encounter obstacles, pause. Instead of immediately pushing harder, look for another path. Sometimes the answer is to bend, to adjust your approach, to wait until the rock softens. Sometimes it is to find a channel where energy can move more freely. And sometimes, like the patient drop wearing away stone, it is to continue steadily, without urgency, trusting that persistence will shape even the hardest barriers in time. This principle can even guide us in small, everyday struggles. When facing a disagreement with a loved one, ask, am I being rigid like stone or fluid like water? When pursuing a goal, ask, am I exhausting myself climbing walls or finding the gentle path around them? Each time we choose the way of water, we conserve energy, build harmony, and gain resilience. Water teaches us that softness can be stronger than hardness, that yielding can be wiser than resisting, and that patience can be more powerful than force. To live like water is to trust the flow of life itself, fluid, persistent, and quietly unstoppable. Chapter 11. The Yin-Yang Balance. In Taoist philosophy, the symbol of yin and yang represents one of the deepest truths about life. Everything exists in relation to its opposite: darkness and light, rest and movement, silence and sound. Each gives meaning to the other. Yin is the receptive, the still, the inward. Yang is the active, the expansive, the outward. Neither is superior, both are necessary. Harmony is not found in clinging to one side, but in learning when to embrace each in turn. Lao Tzu described the Tao as the rhythm of the universe, a rhythm that alternates between yin and yang. Day becomes night, and night becomes day. Summer fades into winter, and winter into spring. Our own lives, too, follow this rhythm. We breathe in, we breathe out. We work, we rest. We give, we receive. When one side is neglected, imbalance arises. To live well is to recognize these cycles and allow them to guide us. In the modern world, imbalance is common. We live in a culture that prizes yang, constant activity, achievement, productivity. To rest is often seen as laziness. To be still is often mistaken for stagnation. Yet without yin, without moments of pause and renewal, yang burns out. The candle burns too brightly and is quickly consumed. The Taoist reminder is simple. Strength is sustained not by endless action, but by balance between action and rest. This principle applies deeply to work-life balance. Many push themselves endlessly, believing that more hours, more effort, more hustle will bring success. But just as the bowstring must be loosened if it is not to snap, the human spirit requires rest. Rest is not wasted time. It is the necessary counterpart to effort. When we allow ourselves time for sleep, solitude, reflection, we return to yang with greater clarity and power. The same applies to emotional life. Confidence, when unbalanced, can become arrogance. Humility, when unbalanced, can become self-doubt. But when they are held together, each moderates the other. Confidence provides strength. Humility provides openness. Together, they form true wisdom. Even in relationships, yin and yang play their part. There are moments to speak and moments to listen. Times to take the lead and times to step back. Harmony arises when we learn to shift gracefully between the two, instead of clinging rigidly to one role. How, then, do we practice this principle daily? The first step is awareness. Notice your state throughout the day. Are you leaning too far into action, rushing, striving, forcing? That is an excess of yang. Are you withdrawing too much, avoiding, delaying, neglecting what must be done? That is an excess of yin. By observing honestly, you can begin to adjust. A simple daily practice is to ask, is it time to push, or is it time to yield? If fatigue clouds your mind, perhaps it is time to yield, to rest, to allow yin. If procrastination holds you back, perhaps it is time to act, to summon yang. Over time, this rhythm becomes intuitive. You stop fighting the natural cycles and begin to flow with them. The Yin-Yang principle does not call us to live in perfect symmetry at every moment, but to seek harmony over time. Just as seasons balance each other across the year, so too can we balance effort and rest, solitude and connection, confidence and humility across the arc of our lives. To embrace yin and yang is to accept paradox. It is to recognize that opposites are not enemies, but partners, each giving rise to the other. In learning when to push and when to yield, when to speak and when to listen, when to act and when to rest, we align ourselves with the rhythm of the universe itself. Chapter 12. Te, the power of virtue. In Taoist thought, there is a concept called Te, often translated as virtue, though its meaning is deeper than morality alone. Te is the natural power that arises when a person lives in harmony with the Tao, the flow of life itself. Unlike power gained through force, position, or manipulation, Te is a quiet influence. It is the authority of character, the presence of integrity, the strength that comes not from demanding respect, but from embodying it. Lao Tzu wrote that the highest virtue does not announce itself. True Te does not seek recognition. It is like a tree that grows steadily, offering shade without asking for thanks. Or like a candle that lights a room, without speaking of its own flame. When a person lives with Te, others feel it, often without being able to explain why. There is a calmness, a trustworthiness, a sense that this person is anchored in something deeper than appearances. In a world where influence is often confused with control, Te offers a different path. Many try to lead by force, through authority, wealth, or status. But such power is brittle. It lasts only as long as fear or obligation hold. The moment those weaken, the power crumbles. Influence grounded in Te, however, endures. People follow not because they must, but because they are inspired. They listen not because they are forced, but because they sense authenticity. Think of those who shaped history not through armies or decrees, but through the quiet force of character. Gandhi, who resisted with nonviolence. Mother Teresa, whose service spoke louder than words. These figures embodied Te, power without coercion, influence without manipulation. Their strength was rooted in moral clarity, and because of that, it reached hearts more deeply than any command could. In modern life, cultivating Te can transform the way we move through the world. In the workplace, it means leading by example. A manager who demands punctuality but arrives late undermines trust. One who speaks of respect but gossips behind closed doors erodes morale. But a leader who models fairness, who admits mistakes, who listens before acting. This is a leader with Te. Their presence alone sets the tone, without the need for constant enforcement. In personal relationships, Te shows itself in consistency. To be kind not only when it is convenient, but also when it is difficult. To remain honest not only when the truth is easy, but also when it costs something. Such constancy builds trust over time. It creates a presence others can rely on, a kind of steady light in the uncertainty of life. Cultivating Te begins inwardly. It is not about appearances or reputation, but alignment between inner values and outer action. The daily practice is simple, though not always easy. Act in ways that reflect your true principles, even when no one is watching. When tempted to exaggerate, return to truth. When tempted to seek advantage, ask whether it honors fairness. When tempted to cut corners, remember that every action shapes character. Over time, these choices accumulate, and the quiet power of Te begins to grow. Unlike fleeting forms of power, Te cannot be taken away. It is not given by others, nor can it be lost to circumstance. It resides in who you are, not in what you control. And this is why Taoism calls it true power. To cultivate Te is to understand that the greatest influence comes not from force, but from living so deeply in harmony with the Tao that your very presence becomes a source of guidance for others. Chapter 13. Ancient Greek Philosophy, Socratic Questioning. Socrates, the great teacher of Athens, once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." With this simple declaration, he revealed his deepest belief, that wisdom is not found in collecting facts, but in asking the right questions. To Socrates, philosophy was not an abstract discipline reserved for scholars. It was a way of living, a daily practice of inquiry. He walked the streets of Athens not to deliver answers, but to awaken others to the questions they had never asked themselves. The method he used has come to be known as the Socratic method, a process of dialogue where assumptions are tested, definitions are clarified, and contradictions are exposed. Instead of lecturing, Socrates asked, "What do you mean by justice? How do you know that is true? If your definition applies here, does it also apply there?" Each question stripped away confusion, forcing his companions to look more closely at their own beliefs. It was often uncomfortable, but it was liberating. For only by questioning can we discover whether our ideas are solid or hollow. The power of this approach lies in its humility. Socrates famously claimed that he knew nothing, except the fact of his own ignorance. This was not self-deprecation, but recognition that certainty often blinds us. When we believe we already know, we stop seeking. But when we admit we may not know, we remain open to growth. In this way, questioning becomes not a sign of weakness, but the foundation of wisdom. Applied to modern life, Socratic questioning is more relevant than ever. In a world overflowing with information, opinions, and competing voices, it is easy to adopt beliefs without examination. We may repeat slogans we hear in politics, mimic advice from self-help books, or follow the latest trend, all without asking, is this really true? Does it make sense in my own life? Does it stand up to scrutiny? Without questioning, we risk living not by our own understanding, but by borrowed assumptions. Socratic questioning can sharpen decision-making. Faced with a major choice, a career change, a relationship, a financial commitment, we can ask, what assumptions am I making? What evidence supports this choice, and what evidence challenges it? What values am I serving, and are they truly mine? Instead of rushing into action, we pause to examine the reasoning beneath it. This pause often reveals hidden motives or overlooked possibilities, leading to decisions that are not only smarter, but more aligned with who we are. The practice is equally powerful for personal growth. We often carry unexamined beliefs about ourselves. I'm not good enough. I always fail. People don't change. But when we apply Socratic questioning, we begin to test these beliefs. Is it really true that I always fail? What examples exist where I succeeded? What definition of good enough am I using, and where did I learn it? In this way, the chains of self-limiting thoughts begin to loosen. Socratic questioning is not about endless skepticism or doubting everything. It is about learning to probe beneath the surface. Just as a sculptor removes stone to reveal the form within, questioning removes illusions to reveal truth. It is a discipline of honesty with oneself, a willingness to look directly at the foundations of one's life. To practice this daily, set aside a few moments for self-inquiry. At the end of the day, choose one action or belief and ask, why did I do this? What was I seeking? Did it truly bring me closer to my values, or did it lead me away? By examining even small details, we develop the habit of reflection. Over time, this habit shapes a life that is not blind or borrowed, but conscious and deliberate. The unexamined life may drift wherever the winds of culture or habit blow, but the examined life, shaped by honest questions, becomes a vessel steered with purpose. This is the gift of Socratic questioning, the courage to ask, the humility to admit what we do not know, and the wisdom that arises when we dare to look more deeply into ourselves. Chapter 14. Aristotelian Virtue Ethics. Aristotle, the student of Plato and teacher of Alexander the Great, believed that the purpose of life was to achieve eudaimonia, a word often translated as flourishing or the good life. Unlike pleasure, which comes and goes, or wealth, which can be gained and lost, flourishing is a deep and lasting fulfillment. For Aristotle, this fulfillment did not come by chance. It was cultivated, step by step, through the practice of virtue. He defined virtue as a habit, not a momentary act. As he wrote, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. This means that who we become is shaped not by grand gestures, but by the small choices we make each day. Just as a sculptor shapes stone by countless strokes of the chisel, we shape our character through the repetition of actions. Kindness practiced daily becomes a kind heart. Courage faced in many small fears becomes a brave spirit. A key idea in Aristotle's ethics is the golden mean, the balance between extremes. Virtue, he believed, lies not at the edges, but at the center point between deficiency and excess. Take courage. Too little of it is cowardice. Too much is recklessness. Generosity, too, is a balance. Too little becomes stinginess. Too much becomes wastefulness. In every area of life, the task is to find the steady middle, where actions are guided by reason and proportion. This principle has powerful applications in modern life. In our careers, we may struggle between overwork and laziness. The golden mean reminds us that excellence lies in diligence balanced with rest. In relationships, we may swing between detachment and dependence. The golden mean calls us to cultivate healthy closeness without losing individuality. Even in health, the extremes of indulgence and deprivation can both harm us. Balance, not extremes, is the foundation of well-being. Aristotle also emphasized that virtue is built through deliberate practice. Just as a musician becomes skilled by practicing scales, we become virtuous by practicing moral habits. To be honest, one must tell the truth again and again, until honesty becomes second nature. To be patient, one must return to calmness repeatedly until it becomes the natural response. At first, the effort may feel forced, but over time, the repetition shapes the soul, and what was once difficult becomes effortless. One way to picture this is as a virtue ladder. Each action we take is a rung, and with each step, we climb higher. We do not leap to excellence in a single bound. Instead, we ascend gradually, rung by rung, until the view from above looks different than it once did. In this sense, virtue is less about sudden transformation and more about steady progress. In daily life, cultivating Aristotelian virtue begins with awareness. Each day presents countless opportunities for practice. A difficult colleague offers the chance to practice patience. A tempting shortcut invites the practice of integrity. A moment of fear opens the door to courage. Seen this way, ordinary challenges are no longer obstacles, but training grounds for the good life. Importantly, Aristotle never imagined virtue as a solitary pursuit. Flourishing happens in community. A person cannot be generous without someone to give to, or just without others to treat fairly. Virtue is relational. It is tested and proven in the fabric of everyday life with others. This is why Aristotle believed that the health of a society depends on the character of its citizens. If individuals cultivate virtue, the community itself becomes stronger. At its heart, Aristotelian virtue ethics invites us to see ourselves as works in progress. We are not defined by a single failure or success, but by the habits we build over time. Each action is a chance to practice, to align with the golden mean, to shape our character into something steady and good. The examined life, for Aristotle, is not only about asking questions. It is about practicing answers again and again until excellence becomes our way of being. Chapter 15: Platonic Ideals and Personal Standards. Plato, the teacher of Aristotle, often spoke in images. One of his most enduring ideas is the realm of forms or ideals. In his view, everything we see in the physical world is only a shadow of a perfect version that exists beyond time. A chair in front of us is imperfect. It may wobble or wear with age, but it points toward the ideal form of chairness, flawless and unchanging. In the same way, acts of justice, courage, or beauty in this world are partial reflections of justice, courage, and beauty in their perfect, eternal form. At first glance, this may feel abstract, but it has profound implications for how we live. Plato's teaching suggests that when we pursue excellence, we are not simply chasing personal ambition. We are reaching towards something higher, something universal. Every time we strive to act justly, we align ourselves with the ideal of justice. Every time we seek truth, even imperfectly, we touch the ideal of truth. In modern life, this perspective invites us to hold high standards for ourselves, not out of pride, but out of reverence for what is possible. When we set goals, they are not merely about achieving external success. They become ways of orienting our lives toward ideals. A person who seeks to be honest is not simply avoiding lies. They are aligning themselves with a greater principle that transcends individual circumstances. Yet Plato was also clear that in this world, perfection is unattainable. The shadows will never fully become the forms they reflect. This means that our task is not to achieve flawlessness, but to orient ourselves continually toward the highest standards we can imagine, while accepting the imperfection of human life. To demand absolute perfection is to court despair. To ignore ideals entirely is to drift without direction. The wise path lies between, striving upward while remaining gentle with our limits. This balance is especially important in today's culture, where the pursuit of goals can easily become relentless. Many of us measure success by productivity, wealth, or recognition, and when we fall short, we turn harshly against ourselves. Plato's teaching offers a different frame. Our worth lies not in flawless achievement, but in our alignment with the highest values we know. To live justly, honestly, or with courage, even imperfectly, is already a noble participation in the ideals. Consider how this applies in everyday situations. In work, Holding to the ideal of integrity may mean turning down an easy but dishonest advantage. In relationships, reaching toward the ideal of love may mean forgiving a mistake or speaking a hard truth. In personal growth, aspiring to wisdom may mean admitting ignorance and remaining open to learning. Each choice, no matter how small, can be measured not only by outcomes, but by how closely it reflects the ideals we hold sacred. One practical way to live this philosophy is through what we might call the daily alignment check. At the end of the day, pause and reflect. Did my actions today align with the values I hold highest? Where did I fall short? Where did I come closer to the mark? This is not about harsh judgment, but about gentle correction, as a sailor adjusts the sails to stay on course. Over time, these small corrections guide us steadily toward a life that resonates with our ideals. Plato's vision reminds us that humans are not just creatures of appetite or instinct. We are beings capable of aspiring. The gap between who we are and who we might become is not a flaw, but a calling. By holding before us the image of what is true, good, and beautiful, we give shape to our lives and meaning to our struggles. Even when perfection remains out of reach, the very act of striving transforms us. To live with Platonic ideals is to walk with eyes lifted upward, not to escape the world, but to live within it with greater clarity and purpose. In a world of distractions and shifting standards, this practice offers a steady anchor. It reminds us that while circumstances change, the ideals of truth, justice, courage, and beauty remain constant, calling us to live in their light. Chapter 16. Biblical Wisdom Literature. The Book of Proverbs, part of the Hebrew Bible, is a collection of ancient sayings that distill centuries of human experience into concise lessons. Unlike abstract philosophy, Proverbs speaks in images that are both memorable and practical. Among its most well-known teachings is the warning: pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. This line captures a truth that transcends culture and era. Pride, in this sense, is not healthy confidence or dignity. It is the swelling of the ego, the belief that one is above correction, above limits, above others. History offers countless examples of leaders undone by arrogance. Empires have crumbled, companies have collapsed, and families have fractured when pride grew unchecked. Humility, by contrast, creates a foundation for wisdom because it keeps us open to learning, correction, and growth. In leadership, this principle is especially relevant. A leader driven by pride may ignore good advice, refuse to admit mistakes, or place their own status above the well-being of those they serve. Eventually, reality catches up. Mistakes compound, trust erodes, and influence weakens. A humble leader, on the other hand, gains strength not by projecting perfection, but by listening, adapting, and acknowledging their humanity. Humility builds trust because people sense honesty and integrity behind it. In personal relationships, the same lesson applies. Pride can make us defensive, quick to argue, slow to apologize. It creates distance because it places the self above connection. Humility, however, softens the edges. It allows us to say, "I was wrong," or "I need help," or simply, "I understand." These small admissions of imperfection do not weaken us. Instead, they deepen intimacy and respect because they remind us of our shared vulnerability as human beings. The wisdom of Proverbs also speaks to intellectual life. In today's world, where information is abundant and opinions are strong, intellectual humility is more important than ever. To practice, it means to recognize the limits of our knowledge, to remain open to correction, and to resist the temptation to speak with certainty about things we do not fully understand. Intellectual humility does not mean doubting everything. It means holding knowledge with both confidence and gentleness, aware that there is always more to learn. One way to practice this is through a simple daily reflection. At the end of the day, ask yourself, where did pride influence my decisions today? Did I dismiss someone too quickly, insist on my own way, or resist admitting fault? Then, balance the reflection with its opposite. Where did I practice humility? Did I listen fully, accept correction, or recognize the value in another's perspective? Over time, this awareness shapes the heart toward wisdom. Another practical step is to cultivate curiosity in conversations. Instead of preparing replies while someone else speaks, practice asking one more question. Instead of assuming you already know, allow yourself to be surprised. This posture of curiosity keeps pride at bay and turns everyday interactions into opportunities for learning. The Proverbs remind us that wisdom is not about appearing brilliant or powerful. It is about aligning life with enduring truths that sustain relationships and communities. Humility is the soil in which other virtues grow: patience, kindness, justice, and compassion. Without it, even intelligence or strength becomes brittle, prone to collapse. With it, even ordinary people become wise, because they remain teachable. The ancient voice that warned against pride still speaks today, not as a condemnation, but as a reminder of balance. Life is fragile. Success is fleeting. Knowledge is partial. To walk humbly is to walk steadily, with eyes open, grounded in reality, and ready to learn. In this posture, we avoid the fall of arrogance and discover the quiet strength of wisdom. Chapter 17. Ancient Egyptian Ma'at, the Feather of Truth. In ancient Egypt, the concept of Ma'at lay at the very heart of life, law, and the cosmos. Ma'at was more than a goddess. She represented truth, justice, and harmony, the order that held the universe together. To the Egyptians, living in alignment with Ma'at meant living in balance, honoring truth, and respecting the natural and social order. Without Ma'at, there was only chaos. One of the most striking images of this belief appears in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. When a person died, their heart was weighed on a scale against the feather of Ma'at. If the heart was heavy with falsehood, greed, or cruelty, it would outweigh the feather, and the soul would be devoured. But if the heart was light, balanced, and truthful, the person would pass on to eternal life. This image is not only about the afterlife, it is a lesson for the living. The daily choices we make either lighten or burden the heart. At its core, Ma'at teaches that truth and justice are not optional virtues. They are the foundations of a stable life and a stable society. In personal life, dishonesty may offer short-term advantage, but it corrodes trust. In society, corruption may enrich a few, but it destabilizes the whole. By contrast, truth and justice create strength that endures, because they align human action with the deeper order of reality. In modern times, the wisdom of Ma'at is especially relevant in the realm of business and personal integrity. We live in an age of contracts, agreements, and constant communication. A single lie can unravel a relationship, damage a reputation, or collapse an enterprise. Living by Ma'at means holding ourselves to a standard of honesty, even when deception might seem easier. It means keeping promises, giving credit fairly, and treating others with respect, whether or not anyone is watching. There is also a personal dimension. Each of us has an inner scale, and we feel the weight of our choices. When we live out of alignment, saying what we do not mean, hiding what we should admit, we carry a heaviness that follows us. But when we act truthfully, there is lightness, because nothing needs to be hidden. In this way, truth is not only a moral duty, but also a source of peace. A useful practice inspired by Ma'at is what we might call the daily truth inventory. At the end of the day, pause and ask yourself, did I live in truth today? Did my words match my values? Did my actions reflect fairness and justice? If the answer is no, there is no need for despair. Instead, treat the recognition as a chance to realign for tomorrow. Just as the ancient Egyptians believed the heart could be lightened, we too can unburden ourselves by returning to honesty and integrity. This practice does not demand perfection. It demands sincerity, a willingness to keep moving toward truth, even when we stumble. Over time, such reflection creates a habit of integrity, a consistency between what we believe, what we say, and what we do. Others notice this alignment, and trust naturally grows. Ma'at reminds us that truth is not just a private virtue, but a cosmic principle. To live truthfully is to live in harmony with the order of the universe. Whether in the bustling markets of ancient Egypt or in the complexity of our digital age, the principle remains: a light heart is a truthful heart. And in truth, we find not only justice and harmony, but also freedom. Chapter 18, Norse Wisdom, the Hávamál. From the cold northlands of ancient Scandinavia comes the Hávamál, a collection of Old Norse wisdom attributed to Odin, the All-Father. Unlike philosophical treatises or sacred scriptures, the Hávamál speaks in simple, direct verses, practical advice for living, surviving, and leaving behind a worthy legacy. One of its most enduring lines says, "Cattle die, kinsmen die, you yourself will also die, but reputation never dies of one who has earned a good name." This teaching reflects the worldview of a people who lived close to nature and death. In the harsh conditions of the Viking Age, possessions could be lost in a raid, harvests could fail, and even family ties could be cut short. Life was uncertain, but character endured. The way a person lived, their honor, their courage, their generosity, was remembered long after their body had returned to the earth. At its heart, the verse reminds us of the difference between temporary success and lasting significance. Wealth, beauty, and power fade. A name built on integrity and kindness can echo for generations. In Norse society, where oral tradition preserved memory, a person's reputation was their most valuable possession. To be remembered as brave, fair, or trustworthy was to achieve a kind of immortality. This wisdom is as relevant now as it was 1,000 years ago. In our world, we often measure success by material achievements, income, titles, possessions. Yet these markers can vanish quickly, swept away by economic shifts, personal misfortune, or the simple passage of time. What remains is how others speak of us when we are gone. Did we act with fairness? Did we keep our word? Did we show courage when it was needed? These are the measures that outlast the fleeting scorecards of worldly success. Consider leadership in the workplace. A leader may drive short-term profits through pressure or manipulation, but if they destroy trust in the process, their legacy will be one of harm. Another leader may achieve slower results, but if they act with integrity, their influence will ripple outward long after the numbers are forgotten. The Hávamál pushes us to think beyond the moment and consider what kind of mark our choices will leave. On a personal level, this teaching also offers clarity in relationships. The way we treat friends, family, and even strangers becomes part of our remembered self. Generosity, honesty, and reliability create bonds that endure, while betrayal and selfishness create scars that are not easily erased. We may not control how long we live, but we can control the reputation we build through daily actions. A practical way to apply this wisdom is through what we might call the reputation audit. Periodically, pause and ask yourself, if people describe me today, what would they say? What qualities would stand out? If the answer troubles you, take it as an invitation, not a condemnation. Each day offers new opportunities to align our actions with the kind of legacy we wish to leave. This does not mean chasing the approval of others or obsessing over image. The Hávamál points to something deeper, living authentically with values that endure, so that reputation reflects truth rather than performance. When character and action align, a good name arises naturally, without force. The Norse knew that life is short and fragile, but they also knew that within that fragility lies the chance to create something lasting. To live with courage, honor, and integrity is to plant seeds that grow into stories others will carry forward. In this sense, reputation is not vanity. It is the echo of a life well lived. And though cattle die and kinsmen die, the echo of a good name never dies. Chapter 19, Sufi Teachings on the Heart. The Sufi tradition, often called the mystical path of Islam, centers on the heart as the place where divine truth is discovered. Among its most beloved teachers is Jalal al-Din Rumi, the 13th century poet whose words still echo across cultures and centuries. One of his sayings captures the essence of Sufi wisdom. Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself. This teaching points to a paradox we all recognize. When we are young, or when we are restless, we often look outward. We want to fix society, correct others, and reshape the world to our vision. But over time, wisdom reveals that true transformation begins within. To heal the world, we must first tend to the state of our own hearts. The outer world is, in many ways, a mirror of the inner one. Sufis believe that the heart is more than a physical organ. It is the seat of consciousness, the place where divine presence can be felt. Yet the heart is often clouded by ego, anger, or fear. The Sufi path is about polishing the heart until it shines like a mirror, reflecting both truth and love. Only then can our actions in the world carry clarity and compassion. In modern life, this teaching is both practical and transformative. We live in a time of constant criticism, where it is easy to point fingers at governments, corporations, or even neighbors. While social change is important, Sufi wisdom reminds us that change imposed from a troubled heart often reproduces the very problems it seeks to fix. A leader driven by ego will create ego-driven systems. A person consumed by anger will spread anger, even in the name of justice. But a heart transformed by humility and compassion will naturally radiate change without force. This inner work does not mean withdrawing from the world. Instead, it means approaching the world from a different foundation. A parent who cultivates patience in their own heart gives their child a model of calm strength. A teacher who practices humility creates a space where students feel safe to learn. A leader who nurtures compassion inspires cooperation rather than fear. In each case, the inner life shapes the outer impact. The practice of heart-centered living can begin with small, daily steps. One exercise is the Sufi practice of remembrance, or dhikr, which means to remember. This involves repeating simple phrases, often the names of God, while breathing deeply, allowing the heart to quiet. The purpose is not ritual alone, but to clear away distractions and return to the presence of love. Even without formal practice, pausing during the day to breathe, to soften the chest, and to ask, "Am I acting from ego or from love?" can shift the course of an action. Another way to practice is through acts of service. Sufis often describe love as flowing outward. By serving others, whether through kindness, generosity, or attentive listening, we polish the heart further. These actions are not meant to inflate the self, but to dissolve it, reminding us that the boundaries between self and other are less rigid than they appear. At its core, Sufi wisdom suggests that the heart is both the question and the answer. When we turn inward, not with harshness but with gentleness, we begin to see the patterns that keep us bound: pride, resentment, or fear. As we soften these patterns, the heart becomes spacious, capable of holding both our own struggles and the struggles of others. And from that space, genuine change flows outward, quietly but powerfully. Rumi's words still guide us. To be clever is to grasp at the world. To be wise is to tend to the self. And in tending to the self, in polishing the heart, we discover that the boundary between self and world dissolves. The world changes because we have changed. Chapter 20. Hindu Dharma, Your Life's Purpose. In Hindu thought, the word Dharma carries a profound meaning. It is not just duty, and it is not just morality. It is the principle that holds the universe together, the law of harmony, balance, and right action. For each person, Dharma is also deeply personal. It is the path you are uniquely called to walk, the role only you can fulfill. The Bhagavad Gita, one of Hinduism's most revered texts, captures this truth in a striking line. It is better to live your own Dharma imperfectly than to live another's Dharma perfectly. This is a reminder that fulfillment is not about imitating someone else's path, but about discovering and living your own. Modern life often pulls us in the opposite direction. From childhood, we are measured by standards set by others: teachers, employers, social media, even family expectations. We are told what success should look like: a certain career, a certain income, a certain lifestyle. In this race, Many people achieve outward success while feeling inwardly hollow. The concept of Dharma challenges us to ask, is this truly my path, or am I walking someone else's road? Dharma does not always mean grand achievements. Sometimes it is quiet and ordinary. For a parent, it may be raising children with care. For a healer, it may be listening to patients with compassion. For an artist, it may be bringing beauty into the world. Dharma is not about comparison, but about authenticity, living in alignment with the truth of who you are. At the same time, Dharma is not purely individual. It always balances personal fulfillment with service to others. In the Hindu tradition, life is often described through four aims: artha, prosperity; kama, pleasure; moksha, liberation; and dharma, which guides the rest. In other words, your purpose is not only about what brings you joy, but also about how your joy contributes to the greater good. A career that enriches you while harming others is not Dharma. A path that benefits the world while destroying your health is not Dharma either. True Dharma lies where your gifts meet the needs of life. So how do we find this path in the noise of modern living? The first step is reflection. Pause and ask, when do I feel most alive? What work, what activity makes me lose track of time? What kinds of problems do I feel naturally called to solve? These are signposts toward Dharma. The second step is to notice resistance. Sometimes our deepest callings feel frightening. They may require leaving a familiar path, disappointing others, or risking failure. Dharma is not always comfortable, but it brings a deeper satisfaction than comfort alone can give. The third step is service. If your sense of purpose benefits only yourself, it will soon feel shallow. But when your path serves others, whether a few or many, it gains depth and resilience. Service anchors purpose, reminding us that life is not just about self-expression, but about connection. A simple daily practice is the Dharma reflection exercise. At the end of each day, ask yourself, did my actions today reflect who I truly am? Did they align with the kind of person I want to become? Did they contribute, in some small way, to the well-being of others? Over time, these small check-ins clarify the shape of your path. To live according to Dharma is to live with integrity, where your inner calling and outer actions are in harmony. You may still face struggle, failure, and uncertainty. But even in those moments, there is a sense of rightness, a sense that you are where you are meant to be. And in that alignment, the ordinary becomes sacred. Chapter 21. Zen and the Art of Presence. In the Zen tradition, wisdom is distilled into simple, direct truths. One of the most powerful is this: wherever you are, be there totally. At first, it sounds obvious, but in our modern world of constant distraction, it is one of the hardest disciplines to master. Presence is the art of giving full attention to the moment as it is. Zen teaches that life only ever unfolds in the now. The past exists in memory, the future in imagination. Yet we spend much of our lives drifting between those two realms, replaying old regrets or anxiously rehearsing what comes next. In doing so, we miss the only place where life is actually happening, this moment. Consider how often distraction rules the day. A meal eaten while scrolling through a phone. A conversation where the mind is half on the to-do list. A walk outside where the beauty of the trees is invisible because thoughts are racing. These are not small things. They are the fabric of life itself. If we are not present for them, we are not truly living. We are only passing through. Zen presence is not about exotic practices or renouncing daily life. It is about bringing full awareness into ordinary moments. Washing a dish becomes an act of mindfulness when you feel the warmth of the water, the texture of the plate, the movement of your hands. Walking becomes a meditation when you notice each step, each breath. Listening becomes sacred when you give your full attention to another human being without preparing your reply in advance. Modern science supports what Zen masters have taught for centuries. Studies show that when people are absorbed in the present moment, they report higher happiness, reduced stress, and sharper focus. Conversely, when the mind wanders, even to pleasant daydreams, happiness drops. Presence is not only a spiritual teaching, it is a practical tool for well-being. In relationships, presence is a rare and powerful gift. Think of how it feels when someone listens to you with their full attention, no phone in hand, no glances at the clock. You feel seen and valued. In the same way, offering presence to others deepens connection far more than clever words ever could. In work, presence leads to flow, the state where concentration is so deep that tasks feel effortless. In personal life, presence quiets anxiety, because anxiety is always about what is not here, what might happen, or what already has. The practice of cultivating presence begins with the breath. The breath is always here, always now. By simply pausing and noticing a single inhale and exhale, we return to the present. Zen masters often say that one conscious breath is enough to anchor awareness. Another practice is what might be called the one-pointed mind. Choose one activity, eating, walking, working, and give it your undivided attention. Notice when the mind drifts and gently return. At first, the mind may wander 100 times, but each return is itself the practice, like building a muscle. Over time, attention becomes steadier and presence more natural. Zen presence does not mean suppressing thoughts or forcing the mind to be blank. It means noticing thoughts as they arise, like clouds passing through the sky, without clinging to them. In doing so, thoughts lose their grip, and the underlying stillness of awareness becomes more vivid. Ultimately, presence is about liberation. When we are fully present, we are not bound by regrets of the past or fears of the future. We are simply here, alive, aware, at peace. And in that simple act of being here, life reveals its depth and beauty. Chapter 22. Creating your personal philosophy. Across cultures, eras, and philosophies, the human search for wisdom has taken many forms. From the meditations of Stoics in Rome, to the silent monasteries of Zen, to the halls of Confucian scholars in China, there is remarkable variety. Yet when we look closely, we see that beneath the surface differences, certain common threads weave these traditions together. They speak to the same human struggles, the same hopes, the same desire for a meaningful life. One of the most striking commonalities is the call to humility. In the Proverbs of the Hebrew Bible, arrogance is warned against. Pride goes before destruction. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu praises water precisely because it seeks the lowest places. In Stoicism, Epictetus reminds us that much of life is beyond our control. Each tradition, in its own way, teaches that the ego must be softened if wisdom is to grow. In our modern culture, which often rewards self-promotion and constant comparison, this lesson remains essential. True strength, they remind us, is found not in dominance, but in perspective, patience, and balance. Another universal theme is the importance of self-mastery. The Stoics insisted that freedom lies not in controlling the world, but in controlling our reactions. Buddhism echoes this with the teaching that suffering arises from craving and aversion, and that liberation comes from understanding the mind. Hindu Dharma emphasizes aligning one's life with one's true path, not being swayed by every external pressure. Across cultures, the idea recurs: if you cannot govern yourself, you will be ruled by impulses, desires, and fears. In our age of distraction, this is perhaps more relevant than ever. A third common thread is compassion, the recognition that our lives are interconnected. Confucius framed it as the golden rule: do not impose on others what you do not wish for yourself. Buddhist teachings extend compassion even further, urging kindness toward all beings. Early Christian writings emphasize love of neighbor as the highest law. Even the Norse wisdom of the Hávamál praises hospitality and the building of reputation through honorable dealings with others. Though cultures differ in rituals and customs, they agree that to live wisely is to recognize the humanity in others and to act with care. We also see a shared emphasis on impermanence. The Stoics practiced Memento Mori, a reminder of mortality. Buddhists taught that all things arise and pass away. The Norse reminded their people that cattle die, kinsmen die, but a good name endures. Each tradition confronted the fleeting nature of life and urged its followers to live with awareness of time's brevity. In the modern world, where we often behave as if we are guaranteed endless tomorrows, this perspective cuts through illusion and restores urgency and gratitude. What makes these threads timeless is that they address challenges that are not bound by technology or social structure. Whether in ancient Athens or 21st century London, people struggle with anger, fear, ambition, grief, and love. The forms of life change, chariots replaced by cars, scrolls replaced by screens, but the human heart remains much the same. Ancient wisdom endures because it speaks to these constants. By identifying these common principles, humility, self-mastery, compassion, and awareness of impermanence, we gain a kind of compass. Instead of being overwhelmed by the differences between traditions, we see that they are like different rivers flowing toward the same sea. Each river takes its own path, shaped by the land it flows through, but all carry the same message: live with awareness, live with care, live with purpose. In this way, the ancients give us more than advice. They give us a mirror, reflecting the essential truths of human existence. And by tracing the common threads, we discover not only how to live wisely, but also how deeply we are connected across time and culture. Chapter 23. Building Your Daily Practice. Wisdom, no matter how profound, only transforms life when it is lived. The ancients did not see philosophy as abstract theory, but as a way of life, something to be practiced each day. For the Stoics, Buddhism, Confucian ethics, Taoist flow, or the meditations of Hindu and Sufi sages, wisdom was woven into daily routines. It shaped how one began the morning, how one responded to challenges, and how one reflected at night. The first principle of building a daily practice is simplicity. Ancient teachers understood that great change does not come from rare moments of inspiration, but from small, repeated actions. As Aristotle observed, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. The goal is not perfection, but consistency, planting seeds each day that slowly take root. A morning practice sets the tone for the day. The Stoics recommended beginning at dawn with reflection, anticipating what the day may bring, reminding oneself that frustrations and difficulties are part of life, and committing to respond with patience and integrity. This can be adapted today with a short journaling practice. Write down one challenge you expect and how you intend to meet it with wisdom. Buddhist traditions emphasize mindfulness at the start of the day. Before rising, simply notice the breath, the body, and the sense of being alive in this moment. This anchors the mind in presence rather than rushing headlong into distraction. A few minutes of meditation, even if brief, reminds us that clarity begins with stillness. Confucian wisdom adds the dimension of responsibility. Morning can be a time to recall your roles: parent, colleague, friend, citizen, and the duties that come with them. It is not about burden, but about clarity, remembering that each role is an opportunity to practice respect, honesty, and care. As the day unfolds, moments of pause help maintain the thread of awareness. Zen teaches the one-pointed mind, giving full attention to whatever is at hand. Taoism encourages seeking the path of least resistance, moving with the current rather than against it. In practice, this means asking simple questions during the day. Am I forcing unnecessarily, or can I adjust my approach? Am I fully present, or drifting in distraction? These check-ins, brief though they are, recenter the mind. The evening is equally important. The Stoics recommended reviewing the day, what went well, where one faltered, and what could be improved tomorrow. This is not an exercise in harsh judgment, but in gentle honesty. Confucius taught that self-examination 3 times a day was essential for integrity. Such reflection clears the mind before rest and plants seeds for growth. The ancients also emphasized gratitude as part of daily rhythm. Whether in the Buddhist practice of rejoicing in simple blessings, or in the Psalms' constant refrain of thanksgiving, gratitude keeps the heart soft and receptive. Modern research echoes this, showing that a habit of gratitude improves sleep, mood, and resilience. One challenge of building a practice is the modern tendency to overcomplicate. We seek perfect routines, elaborate rituals, or ideal conditions. The ancients remind us that wisdom thrives in simplicity. Marcus Aurelius wrote while on military campaigns, with little comfort. Zen masters teach that every activity, from sweeping floors to drinking tea, can be practice. The important thing is not grandeur, but presence and repetition. Another challenge is inconsistency. Here the teaching is to focus not on never failing, but on always returning. Missing a day of reflection or meditation is not failure. It is simply part of the process. What matters is resuming. The rhythm of wisdom is like breathing. What counts is not holding it perfectly, but returning again and again. By combining these elements, Stoic reflection, Buddhist mindfulness, Confucian responsibility, Taoist flow, and universal gratitude, we can create a practice that suits modern life. It does not need to be long. 10 minutes in the morning, a few pauses during the day, and 10 minutes at night are enough to begin. Over time, the effects accumulate. The mind steadies, the heart softens, and life begins to feel more deliberate and less rushed. The daily practice is where wisdom becomes living. Without it, philosophy remains words on a page. With it, philosophy becomes the shape of a life, steady, balanced, and rooted in timeless truths. Chapter 24. Living Wisdom in the Modern World. To live with wisdom today is not to copy the ancients word for word, nor to retreat into the past. It is to take their timeless insights and apply them to the conditions of our own age. The challenges we face are different in form: digital overload, global uncertainty, rapid change, but the human heart remains the same. The ancients spoke to fear, pride, anger, longing, and mortality. These do not disappear with new technologies. They simply take new shapes. The first task of living wisdom in the modern world is balance. We live in a time of abundance, not just of goods, but of information, choices, and demands. Stoic discipline helps us discern what truly matters, reminding us that much lies outside our control. Taoist flow reminds us to move with life rather than exhausting ourselves in resistance. The Buddhist lesson of impermanence prevents us from clinging to trends or anxieties that will soon pass. In balance, we find freedom. Another key is integration. Too often, wisdom is left in books or occasional retreats, while daily life runs on stress and habit. The ancients challenge us to bring philosophy into the marketplace, the home, and the workplace. Confucius emphasized harmony in relationships. Aristotle emphasized habits formed in ordinary actions. Zen emphasized mindfulness in each step and breath. In modern terms, this means practicing patience not just in meditation but in traffic, kindness not just in theory but in emails, humility not just in sermons but in meetings. Wisdom is not an escape from daily life, but a way of inhabiting it more fully. Technology presents both obstacles and opportunities. Social media amplifies comparison, envy, and distraction, yet it can also spread insight and connection. The principle of right speech from Buddhism, asking, "Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary?" offers guidance for navigating online spaces. Likewise, Stoic self-mastery helps resist the pull of endless scrolling, while gratitude traditions remind us to notice the real, tangible blessings beyond the screen. Living wisdom today means engaging with technology consciously, not being consumed by it. Another modern application is leadership. Whether in business, communities, or families, the ancient emphasis on character over image remains crucial. Lao Tzu taught that true leadership is like water, nourishing without seeking control. Confucius taught that virtue, not authority, is what inspires respect. These lessons apply as much to a manager guiding a team as to a parent guiding children. Influence rooted in integrity is more enduring than influence rooted in fear or manipulation. Wisdom also invites us to see beyond the self. Many traditions, from Sufi poetry to Buddhist compassion, remind us that personal growth and social harmony are linked. In a fragmented world, where isolation and polarization run deep. The reminder that we are interconnected is powerful. Service, empathy, and justice are not secondary to wisdom. They are its natural flowering. To live wisely is to recognize that our lives are bound up with those around us. Importantly, living wisdom does not mean rejecting modern knowledge. Science, psychology, and medicine offer tools unknown to the ancients. But without the grounding of philosophy, these tools risk being used without direction. Ancient wisdom provides the compass, while modern knowledge provides the map. Together, they guide us more securely than either alone. Finally, wisdom is not a destination but a journey. The ancients never claimed perfection. They practiced daily, stumbling and rising again. In our time, the same is true. Each morning offers a chance to begin anew. Each evening a chance to reflect. Wisdom is lived moment by moment, choice by choice. To live wisdom in the modern world is to bridge past and present, theory and practice, self and community. It is to remember that those centuries divide us from the ancients. The truths they discovered are as urgent today as ever. Humility, balance, compassion, presence. These are not old lessons. They are eternal ones, waiting to be lived in the circumstances of our own lives.